Hello, I'm Larsonthewolf, and I'm here to talk to you about read-only memories, or ROM. ROM is a non-traditional cross between a point-and-click adventure and a virtual novel that has a devotion on unique characters and a very interesting cyberpunk Neo-San Francisco. The gameplay, while it is supposed to be a point-and-click adventure game, it's never at any point very difficult, and most of the time, in the puzzles you do have, they just serve as a buffer in between finding more dialogue and going through dialogue trees with the various and interesting characters of the game. This is its biggest downfall, frankly, because the game never feels very much like the point-and-click adventure I thought I was getting into, and most of the point-and-clicking that you can do is just flavor text and understanding the world around you, and frankly, funny quips about the things around you. Though I'm calling it, or referring to it at the very least, as partial virtual novel, the dialogue you do have feels like you don't have much choice in what you have to say. That is to say, in some situations, you will be talking to a certain character, and you will have standard dialogue choices such as, why is your hair purple, why do you have cat ears? And rather than picking one and having the character react and moving on with the story, you will say that statement and then come right around back to the dialogue tree, and the story will not progress until you expend all of your options. This causes the player to feel as if they have no control over the game or the narrative, which is frankly sad because, as I'll talk about later, there are 6 possible endings. But in many cases, you're just forced down this entire dialogue tree with this character and getting a bunch of exposition that the player may not even want, making you feel like that is the only character interaction you can have. I also want to call it part virtual novel, and mind you, part, because in many cases, the dialogue is so thick, I wasn't able to save when I wanted to. What I can say that is nice about the gameplay is the fact that in some cases they had inventive and interesting games that are non-traditional in a point-and-click adventure and virtual novel. Stuff that would pop up randomly. For instance, there is an on-rail shooter in one segment of the game. This is great, and it made the gaming experience far more enjoyable than your stereotypical point-and-click adventure game. However, it felt poorly explained in many segments of the game, to the point where I lost not because of my inability to play the game, but rather my lack of understanding due to the information they provided me, the player. This brings us to the point-and-click adventure segment of the game and its mechanics. You have 4 given actions you can do with any object in the game that is highlighted or they allow you to interact with. The first option is the ability to look at anything and have an inner exposition about it. The second option is your ability to speak to said object. Even if they're inanimate, since you're in a cyberpunk world, sometimes the very things you talk to will talk back. The third option is physical interaction, and that's just basically picking up an object, moving it, flipping a switch, you're able to do that. And the fourth action is your ability to use items in your inventory on certain objects. Now, my only gripe I have with the game is sometimes you'll have a person in your party along with the protagonist you're controlling, and they will have exposition to have with you on certain objects. This is great, but in some moments it got confusing of which one did what. It gets very vague sometimes of what your actions do and your consequences of said actions. Side note, and it's just a small little thing, but it should be noted, sometimes the mouse feels odd to use and it's hard to select a certain item in the world, but at least if you're me, I adapted to it quickly and I was able to use the mouse as normal about an hour into the game. This is all I can really say that is greatly negative about the game, other than a little bit of nitpicking throughout the story, but largely the rest of the story and the game in its entirety is very well made, and a lot of the characters are very interesting. Story begins when you, the protagonist, a journalist mostly for small tech, is awakened by a small blue robot called Turing. Turing is one of your distant friend's pet projects on making the first real AI. Turing informs you that your distant friend was taken away and that you were the least likely person that they would see Turing go to, so he feels safe at your apartment. He then asks you to help find where his missing creator, your distant friend, went, and to see why he was taken. The game then turns into a detective mystery after that, and personally, those are some of my favorite types of media in general, and I enjoyed it greatly. I think they did a really good job of adding mystery and plot twists and whatnot throughout the game. I would suggest it if you're coming into the game looking for that. Now, MidBoss, the people that developed this game, went into great lengths to make very interesting and unique characters throughout the game, and it shows. That is probably the brightest part about the game, and that everyone talks about this game, is frankly of how great and interesting all these characters are in specific ways. This is where we need to talk about MidBoss in general. MidBoss, if you don't already know, and I don't expect you to, previously made a documentary about 2 months before the game called Gaming in Color, and it addresses LGBT themes growing in video games and what it means to be a member of that community when you're playing these games. MidBoss, being progressively minded, has added many LGBT characters into ROM. This, in my opinion, added to the colorful characters in this already interesting world. What's more, they avoided what other video games tend to do with gay characters. What I'm referring to is that in many games, a gay character's only memorable trait is the fact that they are gay. While in ROM, being gay is just a small part of who that person is and is often not brought up. My only real problem with the progressive themes in the game is the fact that it is set in such an odd world. The amount of LGBT members you run into is high, and it never feels like a statement like I think MidBoss wanted. The game's statement comes across as, wow, look at this crazy world, you got robots talking, gay people everywhere, and a new better type of coffee. How unrealistic. This may be me overanalyzing it, but all in all, the different sexualities really added to the uniqueness of each character they made. Talking about the end in the game, there are 6 different types of endings you can get with the game depending on your certain choices and how you simply perform in the game. If you get the highest rated ending, and I really like this feature they added, you are able to go back into the world in a special set and talk to each specific person and what they think about what happened at the very end of the game. It really helped you to feel like you had an impact in that world. Now excuse me as I give you my final thoughts about it, in the fact that the music in the game is fan-fucking-tastic. First of all, they nailed it. I'm going to play you the intro of the game, and it sets the tone perfectly for this weird cyberpunk feel of this world in Neo San Francisco. The quality for such a low-budget indie game is fantastic. What's more, at the end credits, they had a weird R&B style kind of rap thing to go along with it, which I expected to be cheesy as soon as I started hearing the rapping, as most, frankly, video game rapping ends up cheesy. But it really was quite good. I was impressed, and I don't even like rap music that much, but it was quite enjoyable. And it really made the game stood out from all the other indie games that have great soundtracks. It wasn't a chip-tuned soundtrack per se, but it definitely put you in the feel in the world they wanted to create. And I'm really glad I played it just for those aspects alone. It couldn't be any better. It was fantastic. Final thoughts on the game is fantastic, with the exception of some rough mechanics and some bad explanations. But if you're looking for a really well-made cyberpunk narrative with delightfully well-crafted characters, then Read-Only Memories is the game for you.